95% of enterprise AI pilots fail. You've heard that one. It's the most quoted statistic in enterprise AI, and it's on slide 2 of a lot of vendor decks. It's also not what the report says. The source is a study out of MIT called The Gen AI Divide: State of AI in Business. The 95% in it describes organizations getting zero return on their Gen AI investment. It isn't a pilot failure rate. Those are different claims about different things, and the number has been traveling under the wrong description for a while. The number worth your time is in the same report on page 6, and it's tracking something more specific. Not projects, organizations, how far companies actually got. And it splits them into two kinds of AI, which is the part that matters. First kind, tools you buy a license for. ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude. Somebody signs up, people start using them. 80% of organizations explored them. 50% ran a pilot. 40% got to deployment. Of the companies that piloted, 1, 4, and 5 ended up deploying it. Second kind, enterprise systems. Custom built or bought from a vendor and wired into your actual operations. 60% evaluated 1, 20% piloted, 5% successfully implemented. Of the companies that piloted one of those, 1 in 4 made it to production. Same organizations, same period, same people signing off. A threefold difference in survival, turning entirely on which of the two kinds it was. And this isn't one study's opinion. A separate enterprise readiness report this year found AI deployed in 57% of organizations, with 11% hitting their top 2 goals. Different researchers, different sample, different question, same shape. One caveat: the MIT report calls itself preliminary findings. It wasn't peer-reviewed. Its own methodology note says the figures are directionally accurate from interviews rather than company reporting. Treat the shape as real and the decimal points as soft. But there's something buried in the winning column that reframes the whole thing. The report is explicit about what those general-purpose tools deliver. They primarily enhance individual productivity, not P&L performance. Read that again with a budget in mind. The category that succeeds is the one whose value nobody can put a number on. The category that fails is the one you bought precisely because the value was supposed to be measurable. So it isn't really a story about AI capability. It's a story about evidence. Look at what large deployers actually publish. One global bank reported crossing 80% employee adoption of its AI platform and 42 million interactions since launch, with 10,000 engineers using it daily. A major law firm went from 32 users sending a few hundred prompts a month to 2,200 employees generating 282,000 a month. Impressive numbers. Not one of them tells you whether either organization is better off. Those are usage metrics, and usage metrics are what you publish when you don't have outcome metrics. When you sort the public claims, they fall into 3 piles, and the difference between them is the most useful thing in this episode. What gets reported is individual time saved. One hospital network put an assistant in front of 55,000 employees and reported 85% of users citing significant time savings. That figure is self-reported by users in a customer story published by the vendor with no independent verification. Almost every time savings number you'll be shown has that shape. What gets claimed is money: 100 million in annual value, a billion in enterprise value by a target year, 30% developer productivity. These are company characterizations, not audited, not independently checked, and generally not reproducible by you. What gets measured is operations, and this is the pile worth studying because it's small and it's real. One health system's capacity tool cut emergency department arrival to departure time by 8%, raised transfers and direct admissions by 29%, and reduced days above expected length of stay by 27%. They translated that into a number an executive can hold, the equivalent of adding 12 beds per day. Another cut door-to-treatment time in emergency neurology by more than 40% across 50 facilities. Notice what those have in common. The mechanism is legible. Shorter stays free real beds, faster triage means faster treatment. You can follow the causal chain from the tool to the number without taking anyone's word for it. Notice also what they are not. They aren't dollars and they aren't time saved by individuals. They're operational throughput. And both examples come from healthcare, an industry that has measured throughput for decades because it was already required to. Which raises the uncomfortable question: if your industry doesn't already measure the thing your AI is supposed to improve, how exactly will you know? There's a trap inside that question. The honest answer in most organizations is we'll know because people will tell us it's better, which is the individual time saved number again, wearing a different hat. If you want a number at the end, you need one at the beginning. What's the current handle time, the current error rate, the backlog, the cycle time, the cost per case? Plenty of teams discover 3 months in that nobody recorded a baseline. So even a real improvement is now unprovable. And unprovable is a harsher verdict than it sounds. The tool may genuinely have worked. But at the renewal meeting, an improvement nobody can demonstrate and an improvement that didn't happen look exactly the same. This is where it turns practical, because it explains what a pilot is really for. Say you run support at a software company. 40 people, a few thousand tickets a month, a help center nobody's audited in 2 years. Someone proposes an assistant that answers customer questions from your internal documentation. 6-week pilot, one team, a couple of hundred questions. It goes well, the assistant answers most things correctly, the team likes it, the demo gets a round of applause. Here's what just happened. You proved the assistant can answer questions. You proved nothing about running it. A pilot tests capability. Production tests everything else: permissions, maintenance, ownership, what happens at 2 a.m. when it's wrong and nobody's watching, and who takes the call. And critically, the pilot was scored the way those big deployers score theirs. People liked it. Usage was high. Nobody produced an error rate, because producing one is tedious. 100 real questions, a human writing the correct answer for each, and a comparison. A week of unglamorous work. That is the entire difference between knowing something and having a feeling. There's a subtler problem too. In a pilot, the questions come from the team running it. People who know the product ask well-formed questions and silently correct a wrong answer without ever logging it. Your customers do none of that. So the pilot tested the easy half of the problem on the only people who couldn't be fooled by it. A pilot with no error rate hasn't produced a result. It's produced an anecdote. And an anecdote is exactly as far as most of these projects get. So why does the gap between the two categories exist at all? Because when you hand people a chat tool, almost nothing lands on you. There's no retrieval pointed at your file store, no document set anyone has to own, no process somebody promised to change. You bought a capability and got out of the way, which is also why you can't measure what it returned. The moment you build something into how the business actually runs, 5 obligations land on your side of the table at once. Someone has to measure the error rate, someone has to own the documents it answers from, someone has to enforce who's allowed to see what at the moment of the question. Someone has to decide what good enough means and what happens when the system doesn't know. And someone has to change the process, or you've bought a faster search box and called it transformation. 5 obligations. Not one of them is about the model. That's why swapping in a better model almost never rescues a stalled project, and why teams keep trying. It's the only lever that feels like it's in reach. It also explains something counterintuitive in the data. The organizations with the most resources do worst at this. Large enterprises lead on pilot count and staffing, and post the lowest pilot-to-scale conversion rates. Mid-market companies moved faster, and the best of them went from pilot to full deployment in about 90 days. More budget buys more pilots. It doesn't buy you any of the 5, so the number was never 95% of pilots. Of the companies that piloted an enterprise system, roughly 1 in 4 got it into production, while 4 in 5 got a chat tool deployed without breaking a sweat and mostly can't tell you what it earned them. Both halves of that are the same problem. One category can't prove its value because nobody measures individual time. The other can't prove its value because nobody built the measurement in before they started. Pilots don't die because the technology underdelivers. They die in the space between a demo that worked and an organization that was never set up to know whether it worked. 5 obligations, 5 things that become yours the moment you build instead of buy. Next time I'll take them one at a time and turn each one into a question you can put to a vendor. or to your own team before you approve anything. You don't need to understand how the model works to ask them. You need to be the person in the room who does. If this was useful, subscribe. See you then. See you.